Good afternoon. Welcome all the members in the media to this chat with the media. As you read, the UK Parliament yesterday accepted an amendment to the Sanctions and Anti-Money Laundering Bill that would provide for the imposition of public registers of beneficial ownership in the overseas territories by our Ordering Council. You'd have seen or read a number of statements from me, beginning with my statement in the House of Assembly last Thursday and up until last evening. So the purpose of today's press briefing is to field questions from you, as I'm sure, given the nature of this matter, you do have some questions. So.
What's happening, everyone? Good afternoon, sir. Zan Lewis, ZBV Radio. Sir, before yesterday's decision by the UK, how long this issue of issuing public registers, how long it has been going on before such a decision? How long government was aware of it before that decision?
The question of public registers of beneficial ownership of companies in the BVI and other overseas territories have been around for several years. You would recall in 2003, there was a long discussion about it in the United Kingdom when we were at a meeting of all the overseas countries and territories with the UK in London. As a result of that, we had many discussions, and coming out of all those discussions, there was the development of what we call BOSS, the Beneficial Ownership System. Right? Because we haven't had the discussions with the officials in London, we recognized that what was really needed at that point was for law enforcement agencies to have access to information, to do the system in persecuting or prosecuting anybody who were using BVI structures for illegal purposes.
But sir, before it came to yesterday and all the negotiations that were taking place, could something be worked out, or could you, the negotiations could not have reached a point where you could have avoided, or government could have avoided such a mechanism coming in place in light of the potential danger if it did exist?
When we were discussing it several years ago, it was something that was being proposed by the government itself. The idea is to have a standard, improved standard of in the national service sector, so that everybody would be at a certain standard. And they thought, what they call a global standard. The UK thought, of course, they should be leading this charge with its overseas territories. As a result of that discussion I said earlier, we came to this decision to introduce what you call a totally accepted standard, which is in the BOSS system. This present bill amendment was being brought to a bill that was being taken to the House by the government, but the amendment was proposed by a member of the opposition. It's Margaret Hodge, I think, right? And so the government could not change the amendment per se, right? But given the fact that the amendment was brought in, there was, of course, the continued discussions with the British government and the overseas territories, and the continued discussions with members of the opposition to get them to understand the implication of this for the overseas territories, get them to understand that what the financial services business in the BVI was something that was well established and very highly regulated. In fact, better regulated than most of the other financial services jurisdictions in the world. Right? However, the amendment was taken to the House of Lords at first, and there, after much discussion, as we discussed earlier, it was defeated because the government was able to rally enough support to establish that it was not something that was necessary, given the reason I just mentioned. And then they went away for a while, but the opposition continued to think about and work on it, and so they brought this amendment to the House of Commons. After this amendment was brought to the House of Commons, then of course the government, as well as all the members of the overseas territories, all the leaders in all the London offices and the organization continue to work towards working with members of the opposition and members of the Conservative Party in helping them to understand what this financial services in the overseas territory, what it was all about, how the fact it was well regulated and the usual. Right? Despite this, they were determined to bring this matter to the House, and they were joined by certain factions, certain persons, certain individuals from the Conservative Party, and the amendment succeeded.
So it would be correct to assume it couldn't prevent it?
Well, it is true that there was a lot of work going on, discussions being held by members of the government, even by the governor here and ourselves. So all the discussion were being held with those other persons in order to try to get them to understand where we were. And as I said, that we were having a system that was totally acceptable and totally well regulated. However, what the government also did, they were intended to bring another amendment, their own amendment to counter that. But that did not succeed in that it was not accepted by the Speaker of the House.
Premier Kathy Richards, JTV News. Given the whole episode of this that has transpired over time and yesterday's final decision, did anyone from the UK government reach out to you subsequently? If yes, who? And if so, again, what was the nature of the discussion?
Well, we of course have been had discussions with the Minister for Overseas Territories, Lord Ahmed, and the Foreign Secretary, and they explained that they worked as hard as they could to try to avert this result. But in the end, this is what.
Okay. So this entire thing is seen, like it's been said by Mrs. Smith, who is an ardent fighter for the territory on this front as well. That this is taking the territory, is attempting to take the territory some 40 years back. If we're to go back to 40 years, what would be that different thing that you would advocate to be done to avoid us being in a situation like this come 40 years forward?
First of all, we're not going back 40 years. We've been through, for several years, dealing with this matter of beneficial ownership in the financial services industry. But over that time, we have always worked and thought about ways which you can address the situation so it will remain pertinent, so the BVI financial services sector would remain relevant and continue to grow. And we've succeeded. And we will again continue to work with the financial services industry. And I'm sure that we will come to conclusion that will be able to help us to continue to succeed as a financial services jurisdiction.
Word on the ground from many is that this is the right time for us to pursue independence. What are your thoughts, Premier?
The matter of independence is something that is in the air right now. It's in the air from time to time, and it's, I think, the right of any country, any body of people to seek to be self-determined and seek self-determination. And that is no different for the BVI. And certainly these discussions in the past will give impetus to those thoughts and those suggestions.
So, Premier, are you saying this is a more serious discussion right now, independence?
I'm sure that discussion will come up.
Premier, just a quick follow-up on that, Honor Devon, BVI Beacon. Looking at the BVI relationship with the United Kingdom, obviously it offers a whole host of potential benefits, but if we could isolate them down to what confidence the association with the UK gives the rest of the world when it comes to investing or utilizing the BVI financial services regime. Assuming the territory decided to go independent at some point in the near future, how do you think that would affect solely financial services? Like, do you think that the financial services sector could survive in an independent jurisdiction?
What I would say to that is that right now where we are, we're in a position where we have grown our financial services within the Commonwealth, within as a colony of the United Kingdom. We have received many challenges over the years, and we've done what we had to do to rise to those challenges, while at the same time satisfying the requirements of the global international standard setters, while at the same time satisfying the requirements of the UK authorities when it comes to criminal activity. Right? We will continue to work within where we are at the moment to continue to make sure that financial services continues to be relevant. And just as we've done in the past, risen to that challenge and found ways to move forward, I'm sure we'll be able to find a way to move forward and continue to have a successful services sector in the BVI as in the other overseas territories.
Sorry, one more follow-up. So, Premier, do you believe that average Hong Kong business person looking to set up a BVI entity would continue to have that confidence and continue to desire to use that as a product of choice if the BVI wasn't associated with the United Kingdom?
I believe that currently there is a very the person with whom we do business in China, etc., have great confidence in the BVI structures. This is why they use so much internationally. I believe also that they also would have known that we've had challenges in the past. They also know that this is something that will come into place, expected to come into place if it does, in the year 2020. And they'll appreciate that there's time for the BVI to continue to work with our industry to see how we can put measures in place to ensure that we have our industry continues to thrive.
Premier Melita McPherson, the Allentown newspaper. Have you had a chance to speak with the financial services sector, and what feedback did you get?
We have not spoken with them as a body as yet, but that meeting is going to come up very soon.
And also, Premier, following the amendment success, we had Overseas Minister Duncan talking in one of the British media that they're going to give some support to the territory from a legal perspective to help iron things out until 2020 come. Are you going to be accepting that sort of support?
I have not had that discussion, but what I do know is that we do not see that this is right constitutionally, because when we negotiated the Constitution in 2007, it gave us a responsibility for things like financial services, tourism, and other things dealing with matters of the Caribbean and so, right? It also said that any decision to have any policies which may interfere with those sectors there would first be a discussion with the BVI on it. So there's a constitutional matter. And just as the other territories, such as Bermuda, such as Cayman, we will be seeking advice from some constitutional expert on this matter. There's also the matter of privacy, right? I don't think anybody would like to see their bank accounts be made public. And so, and this is a major factor as well. There's also the question of, I may go further, human rights. Here we are as a territory. We've had the most severe natural disasters in 100 years in the Caribbean, and the BVI took the brunt of it. It's three things: flooding, Hurricane Irma, Hurricane Maria, left us devastated. And I think it goes against human rights provisions to be able to go and say we're going to take away the other part of your economy. Doesn't sound good, does it?
Premier, how do you feel that the Crown dependencies are not being subjected to this? We're talking about the Channel Islands and Isle of Man. It's a case that what is good for the goose is certainly not good for the gander. How do you feel?
I must say that I was surprised and disappointed. Disappointed not because they were not excluded, but disappointed that we were selected to have this trust upon us, as opposed to dealing with us all together. We have supported each other in the past, because we meet together at overseas territories when we meet with the United Kingdom government, and we tend to work together and support one another. And that's why I'm saying, this is why I'm saying I'm disappointed that we were selected, not that they were not selected. It's a different thing, right? Because, it comes to, I cannot tell you why the difference was made, but there it is, yes.
Davion Smith, BVI News. Sir, in your statement yesterday, you said your administration has been preparing for a number of years for changes such as what happened yesterday in terms of the UK's decision. Then you went on to say that in the coming weeks you'll be acting upon those preparations, those plans. What are those plans, sir?
That's quite true. We have recognized the need to diversify in the financial services sector for some time. And you would recall, maybe you weren't here then, that we did engage a firm, McKinsey, to do a study for us of the financial services sector, where we sat and deliberated with the firm on how we can diversify that sector. Many recommendations came out of that, some of which have we've been employed, and some of which we'll continue to work on to have those employed, because we know that it'll help us to improve what we do here in that sector.
What can you say specifically about those plans?
Specifically, for example, we were looking at the labor and immigration policies. We're looking at investment policies. We're looking at one of the things that came out of the plan was the BVI finance, because it was thought that would be as a sort of independent private sector body. That was one of the recommendations came out.
Sir, has your administration, government, BVI, reached out to any of the other affected overseas territories, Cayman Islands, anything like that? And possibly, is there any sort of expected alliance to try to even push back against this decision the UK made?
Of course, we've been in contact with our colleagues from the overseas territories, whether from Bermuda, Cayman, Turks and Caicos, etc. We've all worked together on these issues from several years ago and supported one another, particularly when it comes to regulations. So we continue to have discussions in this area and continue to work together. We've reached out also to our other Caribbean neighbors, other independent countries, such as St. Vincent, Dominica, St. Lucia, etc. And we've spoken with the head of CARICOM, we've spoken with the head of the OECS, who are all discussing with us how we can move forward in this issue.
Premier, you, sir, along with the governor, continue for several years to speak and to laud about this partnership. You feel proud of this partnership that exists between the UK and the British Virgin Islands. But are you confident now to speak proudly about this partnership in light of what came out of the UK yesterday, when they know for a fact it will damage the economy of the Virgin Islands? Are you still proud to talk about this partnership? And secondly, sir, in light of when it comes, when you're struggling to get yourself back from hurricane, you still speak proudly about this partnership that the UK is still concerned about BVI's economy?
I must say the decision doesn't speak well about the partnership. But I want to also say that the decision came from the opposition, not from the government, the central government, the government in power, right? I would not be able to tell you if the government in power became the opposition, what would happen then, right? But certainly I know that during the past several weeks, while we've been dealing with this issue, certainly the governor, Angus Jasper, had been working very hard, and also the other officials that are in the government, in the kingdom, to help to avoid this result.
So the government is currently putting its agency in place to make as a framework so that the territory can get this £400 million from the UK. Judging for what happened now is going to affect the economic development, the spread or the flow of money in the territory. where does this money come in? What sort of difficulties now do you think the government will experience to repay? Because there are problems in the financial services. You foresee any problems there with this £400 million guarantee that the BVI is to get? What sort of effects there? How are you going to weigh in on that?
The Recovery Development Agency was put in place to help with the recovery, specifically to help with the management of funds coming to support the recovery, funds coming from either loans, from donations, from organizations, or from individuals who are able to give loans or give grants to the British Virgin Islands. And so, and the other part, of course, was to help to provide the technical assistance to aid with the recovery. So there are several facets to the RDA, and not just the loan, the guarantee itself, but the guarantee was an important part of the whole recovery effort, right? And the guarantee would, of course, given by the British government, allow us to borrow the substantial sums of money as we needed it to be able to aid with recovery. The situation, of course, now have to be revisited, right? And of course, revisited will, because if our economy is not as buoyant and does not remain as buoyant, it'll be a challenge to be able to meet, to satisfy the requirements of significant loans. So we'll have to revisit the arrangement based on where we are at the moment and where we continue to be, given what happens now in that from that discussion in the House of Commons yesterday.
So it creates a setback now in terms of the whole restoration process. They have to revisit all of that. The whole restoration area, it's a setback because you can look at the whole agency and the £400 million pounds. So it's a big setback to the restoration efforts in the territory.
No, it's not an immediate setback. First of all, we do have some funds now which have been gotten through the Caribbean Development Bank, which we are actively using as part of recovery. Secondly, we did have some reserves which we had accumulated over the years, which will also be used as part of recovery. Thirdly, there are some insurance monies which will come, government structures, for example. This structure was uninsured, and we did receive a check from the insurance company. And fourthly, we know that there are many people out there, many organizations who would be willing to donate substantial amount of funds to be able to help us to get the territory restored. And the agency will still be able to work, importantly, with all those different areas in order to provide the management assistance, the technical assistance, to be able to help the recovery to go on.
Premier, the opposition have been using two words to try to send over their fight to get the overseas territory to come to the knees as to what they did yesterday by passing that bill. Dirty money. How do you defend against this ugly picture that is being put over the BVI and other overseas territories as it relates to their financial services?
I think the important thing to know, right, is that the BVI is one of the most highly regulated jurisdictions in the world. Secondly, the BVI cooperates with all the agencies which are involved in anti-crime, anti-terrorism, anti-criminal activities, right? Thirdly, the BVI, in order to be even more cooperative, have put in place what we call the BOSS system, the Beneficial Ownership Search System. And putting this system in place means that BVI authorities have instant access to information on beneficial ownership. And this can be exchanged, it can be provided for the British, the UK government authorities in any case where they need to be investigating any criminal activity. That is how the legal system works. And we are, fully, in sync with that. And, always there to cooperate and provide the information that is needed,
And why
where criminal activity obtains.
and so what could be their reason for not being comfortable with the BOSS system only?
I think it's a matter, the British government itself was satisfied with the BOSS system. We introduced it, we discussed it, we let everybody see what it was, and everybody was impressed. In fact, the BOSS system is one of the more advanced systems for sharing information in the entire, among all the territories, right? And the other thing you have to bear in mind is that even if you were to, let's just say you took the BVI out of business, what happens? It offers no benefit to the British government or the British people, because what will simply happen is the proceeds, whatever proceeds they're trying to sort, whether it's taxes or whatever, will simply go to another territory, which is not an overseas territory. So there's no benefit from that point of view, right? And it'll just be causing a country, which is basically one of the overseas territories of the BVI, with whom we have a relationship, to suffer unnecessarily.
But why, Premier? What in your head? What could want them to allow such a thing to happen to one of their territories
That's a good
at such a
question.
vulnerable time when we devastated?
You see, what has happened is that because the BVI has been so successful a financial services jurisdiction and has a large number of companies, much greater than most other jurisdictions, if anything happens, you quite often hear there's something was owned by a British BVI company. More often than not, when it's all investigated, there's nothing illegal that's been done, right? But there's this perception, which is unfortunate, which we've been working to correct, and we continue to work to correct.
Amir, this is piggybacking a little bit on Davion's first question. You and other Ministry of Finance officials have spoken for a need for innovation and creating new financial services products specifically. And in the last year, we've seen the development of the limited partnership and the micro-business regimes, which people in the industry say are important, but have also said that neither is that like golden goose revenue generator that the standard BVI business company is. Could you tell us about specifically some of the other innovations your government is planning to unveil regarding the financial services industry? What new products could help potentially offset that loss in revenue from these public registers?
I can't tell you of new products at this point in time, because what happens with product development takes place over maybe months or maybe years, and this being done both in the private sector and in the public sector, so it takes a while before this can, I say, bubble up and become something that we think we'll be able to put on the market. So, but there's nothing I can say at this moment. But I know that we'll continue to work with that, because we need to expand and widen the scope of a financial services system, including getting more value-added stuff into the BVI, showing more substance in the BVI.
So there is a number of value-added type financial services products in the works, in some degree of works right now.
Yeah. Like I say, I can't tell you more than that. Right?
Sir, what sort of real and visible response can residents of the BVI expect from your government, from your administration, in relation to the UK's decision yesterday? Will there be like a real response, or are we in adaptation mode, just adapting to what they said?
As I indicated earlier, we have responded, as I've said in several of the statements I made, and we are also looking at the whole constitutional relationships. And we're having that, just like with other territories, like with Bermuda, Cayman, we're looking at the constitutional implications. And so we would have to be, of course, having discussions with a constitutional lawyer to see what the implications are.
And sir, have you spoken with the governor since all of this unfolded, and if yes, what's his take? What has been happening with that?
He, of course, is disappointed because he's put a lot of work into this as well.
Just piggybacking on what you just said about you spoke with some OTs such as Bermuda about the constitutional matter. Indeed, right after the decision was made in the UK, Bermuda's new premier did issue a statement saying that one of the things he's going to do is to ensure that Bermuda's constitution is respected. A very forceful comment. And last year it was even mentioned by you that constitutional amendments might be in the works. Would you be pushing now for that, considering that the Constitution passed the 10-year mark?
Actually, we started putting that in place last year, but when the hurricane broke, we had to sort of break it off. But it's something that we'll be continuing to work on, yes.
And would this whole matter with imperial legislation be reflected in any way there, or are you going to wait to hear what the lawyer says?
Well, that would be that will add to the discussion. Whatever consultation we have will add to the discussion.
And just to follow up, what exactly, as it relates to imperial legislation, are you most concerned about, Premier?
I think there's when we have discussion about constitutional review, we look at the whole gamut of things, yeah? And much of it has to do with the relationship between the UK, of course, and the British Virgin Islands. Relationship between the governor and the ministers of the country, how they work together. That kind of thing usually.
Premier, we have time for one more question. If you want to take that question.
Okay.
Minus a double. Premier, with what happened yesterday, you think it is an indication of more things to come from the UK government, basically saying that to go on their own, number one, or what do you expect from yesterday's decision? And it came at a time when the budget was to be passed. And a member of your government made mention this is time to re-examine the budget and shift the focus now to tourism in light of that. And it was to be discussed in committee. Was it discussed in committee stage at that time after the recommendation was made? And if so, what changes were made to the budget as a result of what he said and the move in the UK?
Sorry. We are continuing to have discussions about the need to look at various sectors of the economy. And we've always recognized that our tourism plays a very important part. And we've been doing things to make sure that it continues to play an important part. That is why, for example, we have built a cruise pier and the pier park, because we recognize that we wanted to improve in the area of cruise tourism. Right now, there are several areas that we're working on to improve that sector of the economy as well, because we need to have our roads improved, we need to have our beaches improved and other things. So these things, that's an ongoing discussion even now. That, of course, and other aspects of the tourism industry, meaning putting more effort and more energy into our promotion of the activity, putting more finances into that promotion, and also looking at the things we need to do on the ground, apart from the infrastructure.
What I'm trying to get from you was the budget re-examined as a result of that. Was any re-examination done to the budget as a result of certain talks?
Oh, no, we hadn't done that, is it? Because the budget was just about ready. But there's always a possibility to do what is necessary to make sure that we look after the things, the parts of the economy that's important. And you're talking about tourism.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Premier, first of all, for taking this time to answer these very important questions that we know the media will responsibly take to the public to be more informed. So, Premier, thank you again. Thank you, the media, for coming.